Okay, so we did a question like this yesterday, so let's see if we remember. So first of all, it is so important for you to understand what this number is. Okay, this is called a trig value. This is called a trig value. Tan is telling us, hey, this is the trig function we should use. This is just the function name. And this variable, it doesn't have to be this theta symbol, it can be anything else like an x. It's the angle. And that's my thing I'm trying to figure out, okay? But everybody needs to understand this. Still, my group 12 struggle with this. This is called a trig value. That's all it is. It's a trig value. Okay, this number can be a fraction, a decimal, positive, negative. Okay, here we go. Step 1. We're going to astica this. So that means you have to figure out where you could be if tan is negative. Astica, where could you be? Tan negative. Did you pick these quadrants? Okay. Then we're going to go figure out the reference angle. Okay. What again is the reference angle? The reference angle is the space between you and the x-axis. Okay, the closest x-axis is how far away. That's the reference. That's what it means. Okay, I'm going to go to my calculator. First check. Okay, I'm in degrees. My calculator's good. All right, what's the rule about finding an angle? Every time you want to get an angle, what are we always pushing? Inverse. Okay, we're always going to push an inverse. And what was my rule yesterday? When you're using your calculations, never ever do what? Negative. Never put a negative, because why? We applied the negative already. The negative's already taken care of with our drawing, our location. So just tan inverse without the negative. And then is your calculator giving you, even when you round it, 20 degrees? So if I'm this angle, what is my measurement? It's really showing me that I'm 20 degrees less than 180. Do you see that when I say less than 180? 160 degrees is the position that I'm in. And what's our quadrant 4 answer? I would be 20 degrees less than, what would this whole thing be? 360. So 360 minus 340. Okay? You can always check your answer on a test. How would I ever do that? I would go, hey, what is the tan of 340? I would do that in my calculator. That's my check. Equals. There it is. That's what it had. Okay. Now I'm going to add a layer. So these ones add layers. Question 4. We're different because we don't have a trig value. So how would I get a trig value? What kind of algebra do you want to do with this? Isolation is the technique. So get sine theta. Get it alone. So subtract 4, would that make sense? Divide by 2. All right, that's good. I got a half. This is not my answer, because what have I answered? I've only answered a trig value. So now we go into figuring out the angle. So I'm looking for positions where sine is going to be a positive trig value. Positive Astica stuff is Astica, the A and the S, sine is positive. Okay, angle time, I'm going to use the sine inverse. This time I have a fraction, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use brackets like that. Okay, if you type in sine inverse of 1 divided by 2, your calculator would do this. And then divide by 2. You don't want that, right? Okay, so sine inverse of a half. Did you get 30 degrees? Okay, what did you answer there? That's called a reference. So you have to think about if you are that much away from the axis, where are you? Okay, so if I'm 30 degrees here, it's 30 degrees bigger than 0. That's what you're doing. You're 30 degrees bigger than 0. So 30. And over here, you are 30 degrees. Can we say less than 180? Does that make sense visually? You're less than the 180 line. So 150. Okay, so this is going to put into picture everything from last unit. So everything from last unit says, how should we get this trig value? What's our steps to get the trig value here? Isolate again. Why am I picking that? Because I only see one variable. Cos theta is the only thing I ever see. That's just one style of variable. Okay, so let's start with a minus 4 cos theta. I'm grouping my variables together. I'm going to minus 4. So I always get students who leave that as their answer on the test. Okay, let's say this question was worth 5 points. You have received a half of a point out of 5 right now. That's all you've done. Okay, you've just done some simple algebra. You're nowhere near the angle yet. Okay, so just remember what you're doing. This is you just getting a trig value. Okay, so here we go. Angle. Figure out where I am. That's your step 1. Astica. Cos negative. You got those quadrants? Astica, so I'm in 2 and 3. Okay, now angle. I need some kind of angle, so I'm going to do a cos inverse. What am I going to be using in my calculator? Again, I can't put the negative in there. And it's a fraction, so I'm going to put it in brackets. Okay, so this is what I'm doing in my calculator with no negative. My negative is my quadrants. Okay, it always gets me a reference. It doesn't get me the answer, it's just the reference. Okay, so for this math, I'm going to be doing a 180 subtract the reference. And on this angle, I'm going to be doing a 180 plus. Do you see what I'm doing there? This is the 180 line. Here I'm smaller, but here I'm bigger. Okay, so please don't be confused where to stop, because sometimes I get people who stop here at the trig value. Okay, that's not your answer. Sometimes I get people who stop at the reference because they think that's the answer. Okay, there's lots of steps. Trig value, reference, final. Got that? Okay, so here's something different now. What kind of algebra do you want to do? So all this is last unit thinking. Would you agree with me that I see two variables now? I see a cos squared and a cos. That's like seeing an x squared and an x, like last unit. Equals 0. That's already done. So I'm going to try to, should I try to factor then if I have two variables? What is the style you see? Remember your 4 styles. Simple trinomial? Okay, so 2 brackets. Cos theta times a cos theta makes that cos theta squared part. What multiplies to 2? And then I have to add to a plus 1 in the middle. Okay, everybody's good? That's just the factoring from last unit. It just looks different than an x, right? Okay, so cos theta equals -2. And here cos theta equals 1. Okay, now you kind of almost have to just treat this like 2 different things now, because you have 2 trig values, you got 2 streams. Okay, so let's do this stream. Where am I? Astica. Cos negative. Astica cos negative. Okay, figure out your reference. So my calculator maneuver is going to be cos inverse. I'm just doing a 2. No -2, I'm just doing a 2. All right, is your calculator doing something funny to you? Is it doing something like error? Okay, so now I'm going to write something down. So I'm not just going to write, here's my answer, error. What should I write? What is the angle? There is no solution for that angle. Okay, then we flip to the other one. So on this one, our trig value is 1, positive 1. So cos positive. So that was negative, so that means this is positive. Okay, so trig value, that was done. Now we're to the reference angle. So I'm going to cos inverse 1. And I get I got 0 degrees. Okay? All right, so let's think about it. What if we go 0 degrees this way? What are you actually at? 0. What if you go 0 degrees this way? Another number. 360. So my drawing actually isn't accurate because I didn't know that. So really, the only thing is my angle's in that spot, and what is that spot? You could either be 0 at the start of it, or you could be at the end of it at 360. Okay, number 7. What would you have done? So like this was last unit, x squared equals 4. What would you have answered me here last unit? Plus minus. You didn't forget yet. Okay, because you could square 2 to make 4, or you could square negative 2 to make 4. Okay, also you could minus 4, which creates a difference of squares, which creates that plus or minus 2. So this actually creates 2 streams again. So we're going to have to be doing work for when tan theta is 2, and we'll have to do it differently when it's negative 2. We have to separate these streams. 2 trig values, so 2 streams. All right, so let's go positive tan location. Astaka. And then negative. So your diagrams should be opposite of each other, right? Positive, negative. And remembered I gave you a little bit of a trick last time. Tan is diagonal. Okay, so we're done trig value. We're done location, Astaka. Now, where am I? I need to do a reference. I need that reference, so I'm tan inversing 2. Okay, I'm getting 63.4. That's good. Do you know that this reference angle is going to be good for this one and this one? Everything's going to have that same reference because this is 2 and negative 2 doesn't matter. Okay, so let's talk about what to do. This one would technically be 0 plus. This one should be a 180 plus. This one should be a 180 minus. And what should I do here? If I'm connecting it to the x-axis, then I'm doing a 360 minus. Okay, and then you go, there you go. Get your 4 answers. Your 4 answers to this question. Have any of you noticed what have I never, ever, ever used with my calculations? Never the 90 or the 270. I haven't touched that once, right? It's always 180 or 360 or 0, right? Those are the lines. Okay, should we... Oh, got one more, and then we're going to have to amp it up for the last 3. All right, so sine theta plus 7 equals 7. I'm just going to go isolation technique. Isolation minus 7. Okay, that's 0. Okay, this is just my trig value. This is my trig value. So my next step would be to do Astica stuff. Okay, 0. Is 0 positive or negative? Trick question. It's neutral. It's neither of them. Okay, so I can't be in any quadrant. I'm not in this one, I'm not in this one, I'm not in this one, or I'm not in that one, because I'm not positive or negative. So where could I potentially be then if I'm not in the quadrant? I'm on some kind of line. I'm one of these answers. So let's go to a test. You have 5 options. 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, or 360 degrees. These are some options for your answer. Okay, so let's see. The sine of 0 equals 0. So that is an answer. The sine of 90 equals 1. Therefore, that is not an answer. The sine of 180 equals 0. That is good. Any predictions? That one didn't work. And this one worked. So my answers ended up being that axis actually. So it's almost like the either or. It's either going to be the answers that are on the x or the y. Okay? That one was a tricky one just because I wanted to see if you would know where to go if you weren't positive or negative. Okay, so these last 3 I amped it up a bit. Really testing your skills from your last unit. Okay, first one, I need you to decide what your algebra strategy is from last unit. How many variables do you see? 2. So I need to make sure it has a 0, which is good. Now I go into, should I factor this? Is one of the styles in this question? You got to go through your 4 styles. There's one of the factoring styles there. Which one? Is it a simple trinomial? No. It's a complex trinomial. No. GCF. So there's 2 terms. There's only 2 terms. This term and this term. What do each term have in common? They have a cos x. Okay, cos x times 6 sine x cos x times 1. You can always check your, does this times to that? Does this times to that, right? You can just check yourself out. Okay, this is all last unit. So now I'm going to have 2 answers here. So on this one, I'm going to say cos x equals, do you remember what to do there? Cos x is going to equal 0. And then here, sin x is going to equal, my hint is it's a fraction. Move, divide, opposite divide, right? Okay, we have 2 different things. We got to now have 2 streams going on. So separate these. Okay, we have our trig value of 0. This is the same thing. 0. We're not in any of the quadrants. My answer is not in anything. So I have to figure out where I would be. I got to be on some of the lines, somewhere. Which angle will work? So if I want to start testing, I could do the cos of 0. No, that's not 0. The cos of 90. Boom, that's 0. So 90 degrees. Any predictions of more answers? 270. So I kind of had mentioned before, so sine ended up having answers on this axis, and then cos ended up, our answers ended up on that axis. Okay, jumping to the other stream, sine has a negative asterisk sign stuff. Calculator time, I'm going to do an inverse because my next step is to figure out a reference. Couple things to remember, I'm not doing a negative, and I'm putting brackets on my fraction. (9.6 degrees). Still not my answer though, right? Final answer, here we go. I need to be bigger than 180. 189.6 degrees then. Bigger than 180. And for this answer, I need to be smaller than 360, right? So that question had 4 angle answers to it. Okay, let's try another hard one. So these last 3 are kind of the harder stepped ones. Last unit, what would you do? How many variables do I see? 2. So I make sure it equals 0. Good. Does it factor? Is it one of the styles of factoring? Are you thinking about a complex trinomial? Recognizing it because it's a something x squared part. The squared is something, not just 1. Okay, so let's go FLA number. FLA makes a positive 12. 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, 4. Anything in there gonna get me to the middle negative 13? How about that? Does that work for us? Multiplies to plus 12, yep. Adds to negative 13. So, yep, we're factorable. All right, so let's go here and list how could you have made this f. You got one option, 3 sine x times a sine x. That's the only fit for that. How are you going to make yourself that L? What times what? You could have had a 1, 4 or 2 times 2. All right, so I need to find some connectors. I need a 12 and a 1. So figure out what's the puzzle here. 12 and 1. There's your partners, right? So here I'm going to go 3 sine x and a sine x. First times my first. They're already in there. I was pretty impressed with your complex factoring on your test, actually. Very good. Okay, so here we go. I'm setting up the 3 with the 4 to make the 12. And I put the sign with just a 1. All right, so these trig values are positive 1/3 and positive 4. Okay, do you see how much work you did? You get 25% for doing that work. That's it. Because all, again, you've done is figure out the trig value. So you haven't done anything else. You haven't done astica, reference, and final answer with the angle, right? Okay, so remember all you're doing here is just trig valuing it. Okay, so let's separate these streams. I'm going to do both drawings actually right now. So this one has a positive sign, this one has a positive sign. So I'm going to actually be picking the same quadrants. All right, now we need a reference. So I'm going to do a sine inverse of fraction so 19.5, is that working for you? Okay, I'm going to go 19.5 more than 0. 19.5 more than 0. And here I'm going to do 19.5 less than 180. Okay, jumping to the other side, I'm going to sine inverse 4. Starting my reference process. And are you getting a weird thing again? That should come out to be an error. Hopefully you got that on your calculator. So I'm going to conclude this one would have wouldn't have any solutions to it, but this one does. Okay, this is the very last question. Hardest one. Okay, if I first glance at this with my algebra brain, I say, oh, this is a complex trinomial. That's what I'm thinking. So my FLA is -8. My FLA is -8. 1, 8, and 2, 4 are combos. And I need to add to -3. What do you guys see with -3 combo? I don't see it. It's not there. Okay, so that's out. It didn't work. What's our next option for tools here? The quadratic formula. So this would be a formula sheet thing, right? Remember that? So this is my formula sheet stuff. Okay, so do you see how all this is going through the last processing strategies? Okay, I'm not going to write x because x is representing the angle. And this isn't going to be an angle, this is going to be a trig value. I don't have x, I have a tan x that I'm dealing with. Okay, so that's one common mistake that people make. All right, opposite of the b. So that's going to be a +3 plus minus the square root of b squared. That's going to get me to 9. Subtract 4 times 2 times -4. All of that divided by 2 times 2. Okay, I did a discriminant, so I got 41, the root 41 in that part. So I'm going to have two values, right? Because of the 41 is telling me there's going to be two options. Okay, how did those go? Trig values, that's all you got, trig values. You haven't done any angle work at all. Okay, so again, please don't stop there on a test because you're going to get 25%. Okay, that's it. That's all I'm giving you for that. That's old news. You know how to do this stuff now. Okay, so we're going to separate this into two parts now. Separate into two parts. I need you to go. I'll let you go on your own. 4 answers is how you're going to come out. So do all your Astica, your reference, final. trig values, reference, ASTICUD, final.